Good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me well. Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Designing Innovative and Inclusive Learning Spaces. My name is Konstantinos Andronikidis, and I work for European Schoolnet. And I have the pleasure to be your host today. Before we start introducing our speakers, and for those that do not know us, European Schoolnet is a network of 33 ministries of education, and our goal is to support education stakeholders in Europe and beyond in the transformation of educational processes. Today's webinar is organized in the context of the 10th anniversary of the Future Classroom Lab creation. For the past decade, the Future Classroom Lab has been active as an inspirational learning environment that challenges visitors to rethink the role of pedagogy, technology, and design in the classrooms. Today's webinar is also organized in collaboration with Ecophon, a global supplier of acoustic systems that contribute to good room acoustics and a healthy indoor environment. Ecophon is one of the Future Classroom Lab's industry partners, and we are happy to be joined today by experts on the topic of, uh, and of school and classroom acoustics, who will present more about the power of sound in modern classroom and its great effect over teachers' and learners' health, well-being, and behavior. Our speakers will share perspectives from 5 OECD member and partner countries on some of the latest findings related to sound in schools, as well as a number of innovations in school design and public policy. After their presentation, we will have some time to address any comments or questions you might have, so feel free to share your thoughts, comments, and questions in the question and answer section of the platform that you're watching us. So now we will start with a presentation, the first presentation of today from Dr. Douglas McCutcheon, who is the Global Concept Developer for Educational Environments at Ecophon Central. His doctoral research focused on how sound in the classroom influences speech perception and cognition in children. Today, he will introduce the webinar topic, share some findings from PISA, and provide a global perspective on his favorite topic, the sound environment in schools. So I welcome Douglas, and I give you the floor to start with your presentation.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Konstantinos. And yes, welcome to this webinar on designing innovative and inclusive learning environments. So we've got quite a smorgasbord of talks today for you from different countries, including Italy, India, and Poland, and Finland, and also provide a bit of a global perspective uh, before introducing the first speaker. So this is a school in the Netherlands called De Werkplaats. It's a really inspirational school. It has 300 students, and they share an open plan area of about 1,000 square meters. So there's a lot of activities that are going on at the same time in this space. So you can imagine it's quite a frenetic area. And teachers have to really accommodate this by making innovative use of that space. And they do this with different approaches, including zoning, different kinds of modern pedagogies which they apply there. And you can imagine that the acoustics in a space like this would need to be really well thought out, or the result would be absolutely deafening. So this is the head teacher and architect who perfected the acoustics in this space, or they as close to perfect as possible. They worked with the top acoustician, and they created this space where students can really thrive. And as you can imagine now, this school has an extremely long waiting list. But this is a more typical type of school that you would expect. It's one in Denmark. This is a kind of cellular classroom that I'm sure many people are familiar with. And this really needs a good sound environment as well. And this is what it sounds like when children are not just sitting around and listening to the teacher when they're doing group work, for example. So just to demonstrate, communication in an environment like this really becomes a lot more difficult. I have to raise my voice for you to hear me, and the quality of interactions in this place are really affected, and that's really because speech and cognitive processes are really distracted and scrambled when there's the presence of noise like this. And it's not a good space for typically developing children, one could say, but it's also not an inclusive space because children that are struggling with their hearing or with their language development, they're going to be finding this to be even more challenging. And we have larger population, larger parts of the classroom population are now mainstreamed, and these are children with conditions that are going to be making listening and hearing a challenge. Things like having a mild to moderate hearing impairment, or as this child has, a cochlear implant, or even just learning in your second language, a language other than your mother tongue, is going to present a challenge in those environments. And we really need to remember students aren't the only ones that are in the classroom. We have teachers experiencing vocal dysphonia, the heart rates and the stress levels that are increasing as a result of these noisy environments. And also it alters how they teach the children. It alters their behavior in the classroom. And also they rate very highly on measures of annoyance as a result. So it really constitutes quite an interruption to teaching. But these are quite extreme examples that I've shown you, one open plan school and one more cellular classroom. But now most schools are really probably somewhere more in the middle. They'll have a sort of multi-purpose space like this with cellular classrooms around it, and they'll make quite dynamic use of that space. They'll be quite integrated with technology, like you can see children on their computers and on their iPads. Children will be doing group work in these spaces, but in the corner you can see they've also got a normal classroom where they'll be listening to traditional teaching. And these are environments where they're really emphasizing 21st century skills over parrot learning. So types of skills that children will be using once they leave school. Now, regardless of teaching style and environment, we're just finding that getting the acoustics right is really a major, major challenge. And if we look at the numbers, we can see that most OECD countries are actually failing to do this. We have these PISA findings from 2018, which looked at across the list of countries represented here. We find on average 31% of students go to schools in which they rate that there's noise and disorder in most or every lesson. So we have to ask, why are these environments actually so noisy? And we talked about the pedagogical trends and the open plan and all of these things, but the fact of the matter is that infrastructure is also an issue. The way that schools are being built, and this is another finding from PISA, which is very interesting, showing that the percentage of students that go to schools in which their own headmaster says that their infrastructure is inadequate or poor in quality. And these are environmental factors to do with the infrastructure, like air quality and lighting and also acoustics. So these are really suboptimal environments for learning. And across all the OECD countries, again, we see about 32.5% of students going to schools in which their own headmaster says that the infrastructure is insufficient. So we can see this is really a global issue. So we wanted to know and hear from the students themselves how these noisy environments were affecting them. And so we surveyed over 1,000 students in it was Netherlands and France and Sweden. And we found that a very large percentage of these children said that their concentration in class was being affected, how stressed out they felt during their lessons, whether or not they got headaches during the day, and also their comprehension levels, how well they were hearing and understanding the teacher, and how tired they felt after the class. So all of these effects on noise were noted. And these really corroborate a lot of things that we know already from the scientific literature, and also the education community has known about this stuff for a long time. But it's just good to hear it from directly like that. And hopefully today's speakers will also be able to shed some light on what we can do about this. And one central aspect is really to develop these. These are pictured here are the acoustic standards for educational environments in schools in a few countries. So what this shows is these are evidence-based expert recommendations from acoustic and academic researchers and acousticians. And they really show how to create an optimal learning environment in the classroom. And you'll hear more about those. And we'll also talk a bit about how to fulfill those acoustic standards. And this can be done through a number of material interventions, but really sound absorption is quite key. Removing sound energy from that environment is key to this. So I'll just quickly introduce our first speaker today is Arianna Stolfi, Professor of Building Physics at the Politecnico di Torino in Italy. And Arianna has over 60 peer-reviewed articles on classroom acoustics and many other acoustic-related topics. And she spent the last 2 decades of her career fighting for better acoustics in schools in Italy. And I'm pleased to say that the battle has been won. So she'll talk today about the new Italian acoustic standard for schools, which is actually now a mandatory requirement for all public schools in Italy. What a success. And it really provides a great example for the world to follow on how to get acoustics right in a school environment. So welcome, Professor Stolfi.
Welcome to you, and thank you, Douglas, for your introduction. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to present news from Italy because just at the beginning of August we had the new decree that furthermore include our technical standard as compulsory for new schools in Italy, so that it is a very news for everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. It's perfect. Yes, I'm going to speak to you to the this innovative new school acoustic standard in Italy that improves speech clarity in classrooms, of course. Yes, introduction on the regulations in Italy. We have the decree of the President of the Council of Ministers dated back 1997 that is related to all the buildings, private and public buildings, and it assigns mandatory limit value to different parameters related to noise protection. Depending on the use of the building, of course, but more, it includes reverberation time for educational building only, with limit values that are dated back to the 70s. And after the decree dated back 1997, the Italian Acoustical Association promoted the actions on decision makers, and a new regulation has been issued for public buildings. In fact, it is new, the decree of the Ministry of Ecological Transition, dated the 23 of June 2022, published on the Gazzetta Ufficiale, the 6th of August 2022, titled Minimal Environmental Criteria, CAM, Criteri Ambientali Minimi in Italian, for assignment of the design service for building interventions, for the assignment of works for building interventions, and for the joint assignment of design and works for building interventions. It holds for all public buildings, such as educational buildings, and it distinguishes between acoustic requirements of building components and acoustic comfort. It recalls some technical standards, among which the UNI 11532 Part 2, which become de facto mandatory. The decree recalls the UNI 11367, dated back 2010, that is related to sound insulation and service equipment noise, and also the 11532 Part 1, dated back 2018, internal acoustical characteristic of confined spaces, and the one related to educational spaces, that is the 11532 Part 2, dated 2020, related schools. And this standard, that is the 11532, becomes the new reference for the acoustic comfort in schools, of course. The part 2 and the part 1 is more general. It is important to underline that in the event that the criteria included in the B standards and the criteria in the decree dated back 1997 provide different performances for the same indicator, the values to be achieved are those which provide for the more restrictive performance of the two. The standard 11532 on acoustic comfort is a reference in public tenders in Italy, as it specifies clear goals, defined calculation methods, and practical verification methods. It covers all public spaces, such as educational spaces in 2020, and we are working on offices and open plan offices. And in the future, we will work on conference and multipurpose rooms, hospitals, eating establishments, sports facilities, and museums. It is a package of standards. And in short, this standard, that is a package of standards, focuses on all public spaces in which people are involved in communication, listening, or speaking for work or pleasure. The part 1, as I said before, it covers fundamental acoustical aspects, the definition of the quantities, the prediction methods, and the verification methods. And the part 2, released in 2020, it is focused on educational spaces. The technical goals have been listed, and acoustical parameters that are covered are C50, clarity, reverberation time, speech transmission index, background noise level, both from service equipment and environmental noise. The part 3 is aimed to give requirements for offices. The approach for classroom acoustics is summarized in this slide. We start from the requirement that a normal vocal effort of the teacher is admitted in a regular small and medium-sized classroom. And we ensure optimal values of reverberation time and noise from equipment and outdoor noise, so that we ensure high speech intelligibility for pupils, and in the end, a good speech communication in classrooms. The categories of the school environments are related to the use of the environment. We have 6 categories, from music to areas that are not intended for learning, such as atria and offices and corridors, etc., and libraries. Category A5 is for sport, and categories from A1 to A4 are for teaching. A4 is for teaching to students, to pupils with special educational needs. The category A1 is for music. The category A2 is for speech at the university level. The category A3 is for teaching in the case of we should have interaction between teachers and pupils. Yes, these are the scheme of the categories from A1 and A4, apart from sport, and these are some examples of the category A6, canteens and libraries, for example. Yes, in the standard 11532 part 2, anyway, the requirements for sound insulation are anyway are indicated as reported in another technical standard that is the UNI 11367, corresponding to the superior performance of this standard. And for example, these are some parameters and limit values for sound insulation between rooms, etc., and impact sound installations, and requirements for technical equipment, example given HVAC systems that are installed out of the room, object of measurements. But yes, because the HVAC systems and all the equipment are considered in two different standards. The requirements in the case of equipment or operating systems that are installed in the room in which the noise is measured, as in this case, are covered by the UNI 11532. And in the case of operating systems that are installed out of the room in which the noise is measured, as in this case, the requirements are covered by the UNI 11367. These instead are the requirements for reverberation time. These are some formulas related to categories from A1 to A5. A5 is the sport one, and yes, all these formula start from the knowledge of the volume of the room, and it is intended that this optimal value calculated according with this formula is intended for classrooms that are 80% occupied. In the case of sport environments, instead, this formula is related to unoccupied room. Anyway, we can obtain for the verification phase the optimal value in the case of unoccupied conditions, thanks to this transfer function and the knowledge of the absorption of pupils, of course. And these are the same formulas reported in some graph in which we can see the volume of the room, the categories, and the optimal reverberation time. For example, in the case of category A4, and category A4, it is intended for special needs, for pupils with special needs. We can see that for a room of 200 cubic meters, a reverberation time occupied of 0.5 seconds is permitted. Anyway, this instead is the graph in which you can see that an optimal value across frequencies of reverberation time equal to, in the example I gave you before of 0.5 seconds, should be maintained over all the frequency of the range admitted from 120 Hertz to 4 kilohertz. It is advised to have optimal values that are related to all the range of frequencies, but anyway, some tolerance is admitted towards the lowest and the highest frequencies. This slide instead shows you the limit values for the background noise from equipment that are in the room under measurements, and the background noise admitted in terms of ambient noise, that is all the noise inside the classrooms from outdoor and from equipment together. Yes, this is the limit value of noise from continuous operating system inside the room, and as alternative parameter we can use the noise criteria limit. And instead, this is the these are the requirements for ambient noise, that is overall noise level in the environment from equipment and from outdoor in unoccupied conditions. These are instead the measurement positions in the case of small classrooms and in the case of high classrooms with higher volume without and with public address system. Yes, these are the mandatory positions. One position is very close to the noise source, and yes, these are the mandatory positions from the measurement of noise and the measurement of speech intelligibility. Yes, this is the case of, for example, noise source inside the classroom. We have to measure at least, for example, 4 positions and then average on the energetic basis the values and obtain the noise from equipment. Of course, and in the case we have ambient noise to be a guarantee, we have to measure, of course, both the contributions from equipment and outdoor noise. We have to add, of course, over a logarithmic base, and then we can have the ambient noise to be compared with the limit values. We have also to guarantee enough speech clarity, and this is a formula allowed for calculation speech clarity, starting from the distance from the source, the volume of the room, and the reverberation time, and we should have at least an average value of speech clarity of 2 dB across the positions in the classrooms, but the speech clarity can be used instead of a speech transmission index, that is another index related to speech intelligibility, only in the case of classrooms with volume lower than 250 cubic meters. The speech clarity is intended as the ratio, logarithmic ratio of the energy that arrives to the receiver of the direct sound and a reflected sound that arrives in 50 milliseconds after the arrival of the direct sound, and the ratio is respect to all the energy that arrives after 50 milliseconds. The speech transmission index is the other speech intelligibility parameter that we included in the standards for classrooms with volume lower and higher than 250 cubic meters. And of course, we can evaluate it without amplification system or with amplification systems. And yes, and as average value, we should guarantee at least values higher than 0.55 or 0.60 in the case of amplification systems, of higher than 0.50 for larger volumes. And we also included the design methods that are 3 in the case of different approach to calculation. Final remarks, the standard 11532.2 is based on other European standards on classroom acoustics, but it fits Italian school conditions that include no carpets, smooth surfaces, high room volumes, high traffic noise levels, no air conditioning or not so common, no amplification systems, and so on. It fits also for full or partial renovation of classrooms, considers both the verification phase in empty condition and the use phase in occupied conditions, and it limits the noise levels from equipment installed inside and outside the room, and for the overall noise level that includes also noise from outdoor. It includes reference values and design and verification methods, and in the end, it harmonizes national and international standards on noise and reverberation. Thank you for your attention, and I'm going to advertise the next Forum Acousticum 2023. I am the president of this conference that will be in Torino, my town, Italy, from 11 to 15 of September 2023. And today the call for abstract is open, and yes, a special session on classroom acoustics will be organized. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Astolfi, for this very, very detailed and very interesting presentation of the new acoustic standards in Italy. And also for taking the time to be with us today. If anybody has any questions for Professor Astolfi, feel free to use the chat, and then we will have the time in the end of the webinar to ask the questions. So now we will continue with a few case studies, let's say a bit more deep dive in some specific examples. And we continue with Mikołaj Jarosz, who is an architect and concept developer at Ecophon Poland. And he's going to talk about room acoustic standards and quality of education with a focus on end users' opinions. In his presentations, he will share some results of acoustic treatment of a large primary school in Warsaw, where a questionnaire was shared among teachers and students and shows how important proper acoustic environment is for quality education. Welcome, Mikołaj, with us, and well, you can start with your presentation.
Yes, good morning. In fact, I'd like to present today a case of large primary school in Warsaw that was acoustically refurbished a few years ago. The case is very interesting because it changed perception of acoustic issue in the schools, at least in Warsaw municipality, if not in the whole country. The school itself was built roughly 10 years ago. Since all the spaces, all the rooms inside were finished with hard surfaces like plaster, concrete, glass, and hard floors, it was very noisy. The average sound levels during the breaks in the corridors were around 85, 87 decibels, sometimes, some days reaching 92 decibels. When I said that the average levels means that were average levels for the whole break, with maximal levels reaching 110 decibels. To make you understand what that means, I can say that you can experience 85 decibels when driving a car on the motorway with the speed 140, 150 km per hour with open windows. And the 92 decibels is a noise produced by angle grinder cutting metal at the distance of 1 meter. So it was very, very noisy. And the parents were fighting for 2 or 3 years to push the municipality to make acoustic treatment of the large school to reduce noise level and to improve speech intelligibility. The works were complete in 2018, and the moment was very specific because in that year the Polish room acoustic standard became mandatory, exactly the same way as the Italian standard became mandatory this year. And the school became the first school in Poland meeting demands of this standard in demands in terms of room acoustic. So it became an excellent testing ground to check what can be changed in Polish education if we provide proper acoustic to the schools. So the questionnaire survey was done by Professor Irena Polewczyk from Uniwersytet Śląski in Katowice, and over 400 pupils and teachers took part in the survey. And the survey was quite wide because only teachers answered over 120 questions related to different topics of their works in work in school. So what changed? In the classrooms, acoustic treatment allowed to reduce reverberation time. This is an example of the classroom of early education. We can see that reverberation time was pushed down from 1.4 second to 0.6 roughly. And this is an example of the classroom for language education. And here the drop was even larger, from 2 seconds to 0.6. So the change was huge. And that affected with significant rise of speech transmission index. This index shows how good are conditions for speech communication. And minimal level of STI demanded by Polish standard is 0.6. We have had in the classroom in this school merely 0.5, and it was possible to raise this level to 0.7. So STI at the level of 0.7 means almost ideal condition for speech communication. So the teacher were asked about different topics. One of these topics were level of the concentration of the pupils during the lessons. And 16% of the teachers said that the level of concentration before acoustic treatment was high or very high. When asked about the same topic after acoustic treatment, almost 80% said so, that the level of concentration was high or very high. Similar changes can be observed in the pace of work, speed of work of the pupils. 30% said that was high or very high. Now it's 77. Ability to memorize new information obtained during the lesson, the rise from 10 to 66. Understanding of teacher's instruction, in fact, is a question about speech intelligibility, and we have a rise here from 21% to 78. And there the teacher was asked about semester grades of the pupils, and 2/3 of them said that the semester grades are better now or far better. Corridors. Everything started from corridors because they were very noisy spaces, and parents associated noise levels with the level of aggression. So it is very interesting what happened here. The noise level drop achieved after acoustic treatment was around 7-8 decibels. And it might be seen as a small difference, the difference between 73 decibels and 8 decibels. But in fact, for most people tested, 8 decibels, reduction of 8 decibels means reducing noise level by half. So teacher were asked about psychomotor, the level of psychomotor agitation, means arousal of the pupils during the break in the corridors. And they said that 93% of them said that the level of arousal was high or very high. Now it dropped to 61%. Then was questions about physical aggression, verbal aggression, and mental aggression in the corridors. And in terms of physical aggression, 36 teachers said that it happened frequently or very frequently in the past, but now it was reduced. This opinion was reduced to the 16% of the teachers. Sport hall. The reduction of the sound level was similar like in the corridors. The reduction of the reverberation time was from, as I remember, from 6 seconds to 1.8, what means that condition for the speech communication were far better. So the teacher will ask, what is the maximal range of speech communication? In other words, what is the maximal distance between speaker and listener, allowing good speech communication. And speaking about the situation before acoustic treatment, 75% of the teachers said that such a communication is possible up to 3 meters, not on the longer distance. When assessing present situation, when sport hall was acoustically renovated, 75% of the teachers said that the speech communication is possible over the distance larger than 3 meters. They said it's possible to talk each other at the distance of 6, 9, 12, or even on the larger distance than 12 meters. They were asked about level of speech and intelligibility during events organized in the sport hall with amplification. Merely 5% of teachers said that the level of speech intelligibility was good or very good. Now 66 said so. When the question was about speech intelligibility during events without amplification system, you can see that nobody said it was good or very good. Now 38% said so. The level of physical education teacher tiredness after lessons. Teachers said 76% of teachers said that they were very tired after the lessons, and now there are just 20% of them saying so. And the related topic, teachers' well-being, not only physical education teachers but general teachers. They were asked about vocal fatigue. We know that the vocal disorders are the major professional occupational disease among the teachers, because they are working, they're using their voice in their work all the time. So 88% of the teachers said that the level of vocal fatigue before acoustic treatment was in their case high or very high. Now it dropped to 25%. The same differences can be observed when teachers are asked about headaches, about tinnitus. I mean, the noise heard in their ears, the noise that is not produced by environment, but noise that is heard all the time, and also the level of the stress in the work, huge drop, and the level of the tiredness after a whole day in school, similar result like in the case of physical education teachers. So the positive result of the acoustic treatment in this school was so obvious and presented by the press and the television, that Warsaw municipality started the pilot program, and during this pilot program, 10 more primary schools in Warsaw was acoustically renovated. And now we are waiting for the result of the questionnaire survey done in these 10 schools. And the pilot study was done to prepare the program of acoustic treatment in the rest, roughly 200 primary schools in the Warsaw in the future. So the future we are heading is a bit misty, maybe, but I believe very, very bright. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mikołaj, for this presentation, for showing us some examples of what is happening in Warsaw, and hopefully other schools in the country will follow this example. So we are now moving on with the next presentation, and I welcome Harsal Kolwankar, who is Ecophon concept developer for education in India. He's responsible for spreading acoustic awareness in education institutions across the country. And today he's going to give us an Indian perspective on the traditional classrooms and multipurpose halls and the noisy challenges and probable solutions that might exist. Welcome, Harsal, and the floor is yours. I will just...
Thank you so much. Yes, I hope my screen is visible. So let us first understand what is traditional classroom teaching and multipurpose hall. So before that, just to give you an overview of the Indian education system. India's higher education system is one of the largest in the world, enrolling over 70 million students. And of course, it's growing year on year and to reach $225 billion by financial year 25. We have seen also an increase in the education technology market here. When it comes to e-learning, we are soon to become the number one when it comes to e-learning as well. Just to give you some sector details, we have around 1,000 universities here in India, 52,000 around colleges, and 1.5 million schools. And of course, there is the segregation between government schools and private schools. So around 1 million of them are government schools, and the rest can be termed as private schools. Now, I know the government schools in Europe are very good, but it's opposite here in India. The private schools are really good, and the government schools have to really sort of get going when it comes to the infrastructure and the other developments which are needed. And the education structure here is pretty much into the public and the private sector. Public sector has central, state, government educations. You have in the private sector the formal setup where the schools and higher education institutions are there, and the non-formal setup which includes your preschools, coaching classes, multimedia schools, vocational training centers, and so on and so forth. Now, coming back to what our agenda today was, traditional classroom teaching. Now, what is this traditional classroom teaching that we actually follow over here? To give you in a nutshell, it's a completely teacher-led classroom wherein the teacher stands at the dais addressing the whole classroom. And the strength of the students approximately for government schools is 60 to 75 students. And private schools, we have around 40 to 60 students per classroom. And international schools should be around 25 to 35. And majority of the classrooms in government and private schools have one teacher per classroom. Having said that, this is a very trustable and proven over the years method, wherein the earlier discourses were always through form of a teacher to their students. So it's kind of fetched us good results so far, but there are certain challenges to it as well. There are certain acoustic challenges which I would like to just show. One is that we have a lot of ceiling fans over here. As they are in itself, they are really good. But if you see any student sitting below the fan has a compromised sound that reaches to him. So there is a certain compromise that has been made because of the fans and the students sitting just below the fan. Again, the strength of students, since the strength of students is high, of course, the noise levels generated also are subsequently high, and puts a lot of pressure onto the infrastructure as well. Also, there are a lot of reflective surfaces over here. So since the acoustic awareness itself isn't that much, especially in the government sector, so or the government schools rather. So we have a lot of reflective surfaces. So the absorption of sound in itself is a bigger challenge. And since technology has taken pace, there is a lot of increase in the e-learning system or the interactive learning, I may say. So as you can see the image here, there is this projector drop. There are speakers inside the classroom. Now I've really observed that when there is a considerable amount of a noise in that classroom, so One of the things, the students is not able to hear well because he's not able to, the speech clarity isn't good. So he's telling the teacher to increase the volume of the speakers. Now the volume of the speakers, when they go high, the intensity of sound is increasing, but the clarity isn't increasing. So that again becomes one of the challenges in the classroom traditional setup. Also, as I mentioned earlier, there is one teacher per classroom. So imagine, addressing a classroom of say 50 to 60 students. It really tests the vocal limits of a teacher, and stress and absenteeism also are one of the things which increased level of noise makes onto the teacher. Also, there are open doors and windows for the ventilation purpose, or we don't have air conditioned rooms as much. So one of the reasons is the noise from the corridor also gets inside the classroom from the windows, the traffic noise. So it again increases the noise levels overall. So we did one study here in India. We surveyed around 235 teachers, and we asked them a couple of questions. So I have just taken two questions out of them. Do you tend to ignore and adjust generally, or act over it and raise the issue with the higher management regarding high noise levels? And around 61% teachers just ignore or rather adjust to these problems regarding acoustics rather than escalating it. And the other question was, do you feel the need to have an infrastructure that absorbs sound and reduces noise levels and acoustic problems in your current classrooms or institutions? So clearly, 88% teachers feel that the current infrastructure in the classroom is not adequate in terms of acoustics, and it really needs to be managed in a much better way. And same is the case with multi-purpose halls as well. Now here in India, the multi-purpose halls are actually multi-purpose halls. So you might see a sports activity, an annual function in the daytime, and towards the evening you might see a wedding happening there. So again, there are a lot of activities or varied activities that are conducted here in the multi-purpose hall, and again, lack of acoustics is something which hampers the overall hearing environment. So it's not just restricted to canteen and classrooms. I'll just show you a small video of a school wherein we just went inside the school with a dB meter, and the half-filled canteen had a noise levels of around this much.
Of course, the school canteen is it's a large gathering place, and there's always a lot of noise in that. So that's one of the areas.
So the decibels were around 75 to 80 decibels. Here in India, there are certain, acoustic standard recommendations, but there is nothing compiling or, and as a form of a compulsion. So 75 to 80 decibels here is set as a maximum permissible limit for factories and industrial areas, and nowhere for an educational setup. But clearly the noise levels, are escalating in some of the areas. So what can be done over here, what has been done over here by whatever we could. So for example, this is one of the classrooms before. So we have kept all the other things as uniform, your fans, your the strength of students, the doors, windows. But what we also added is something like this, a ceiling acoustic treatment in the existing setup as well. So this was done in one of the classrooms on a weekend. So we started doing it on Friday, and it was done by Sunday. And Monday, the students again came back to the classroom. So the values that we got here were earlier, if you can see on your screens right now, it was 73 decibels pre-treatment, and post-treatment, it went down to 63 decibels. Now, there was a 10 dB reduction which psychologically users of the space perceive as half the noise reduced. That is why when the students came on the Monday, they were like half the noise has somewhere gone, and that's how psychologically it sort of it's an advantageous thing for the users of the space. Now, when it comes to the e-learning, we again through a proper acoustic ceiling wall treatment, uh, we sort of helped out in terms of the speakers making a lot of noise or the speech clarity which was reduced. So I'll just play a short video of the pre-treatment and the post-treatment.
As natural as it comes. We discovered it had the most amazing properties when turned into glass wall. First there was glass. Well, actually, first there was sand, as natural as it comes. We discovered it had the most amazing properties when.
So as you can see in the post-treatment, it was at least clear what is being communicated. And one of the things we also found out that teachers over here were using a microphone while addressing the students. And when the absorption increased, they also let go of this microphone because they didn't have to throw a lot of voice when they're speaking. And the last bencher was also able to hear them quite well. So we've done a lot of acoustic treatment here, changing how the classrooms and the other spaces in India look like. We're keeping the existing ways of learning and technological advancements uniform. So we've done some. I've just compiled a few images for the work that we've done. And of course, as the market is evolving, the need for acoustics is also increasing, especially. So I'm in Mumbai right now, Mumbai, India, which is one of the noisiest city in the world. And so even more, we need to, sort of be aware on the acoustics front. And it's clearly gaining its own importance, so on and so forth. So I guess this was my small presentation on the Indian perspective of acoustics.
Thank you very much, Harsal, for this interesting insight. It was very interesting to see. I've never had classrooms of 60 students, at least in Europe, so very interesting perspective. And now we will welcome our last presentation for today by Pauli Palaskorpi, a former teacher and Ecophon concept developer for education in Finland. And his presentation will tackle open learning environments and wooden schools in Finland and present shortly why these two trends exist in the country. So Pauli, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello from Finland. So, okay, this is these two facts. These are really trendy at the moment in Finland. It's been this. Okay, I try to. I can't change the slide.
You would have to press on the presentation once, and then with the arrows you can change it.
One second. Meri.
Okay, and as we're waiting for Pauli to fix the presentation, just wanted to remind you that you can use the chat to share your own perspectives, perhaps how is your classroom acoustics in your country, whether you have been experiencing any issues as teachers with high classroom sound environments. Feel free to share your experiences and ask any questions you might have to our speakers. And I think, Pauli, have you fixed it?
I think so. Can you see the next slide now?
Yes, can you try to change it to see
Yeah,
if
I
it
try to
works?
change again. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay,
I'll let you
perfect.
then.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for my colleague. Yeah. Okay. So open learning landscapes. This is very trendy at the moment in Finland because since 2016 there was this new curriculum for education in Finland, and it encourages to student-centered learning. It's it means more group work, dialogue, moving around in a classroom, all kind of not only sitting down and listening to the teacher and so on. So all this makes much more noise, of course, in the classroom. And the new normal in Finland is to have these open learning landscapes in new buildings and all refurbishments what are made in these old schools, because we have a lot of old schools, and refurbishments must take these into consideration, this new learning style. So very often two to four teachers might take care of a bigger group in this open learning environment. And of course, proper acoustics is a must. So ceiling, walls, I emphasize these because those have a large possibility to install acoustic tiles, but you can do it even a little bit better if you use some screens, soft carpet, soft furniture, curtains, sliding doors. But ceiling and walls is of course the most important thing. So I don't know if you can see my pointer. Maybe I don't touch anything because it's otherwise something happens. So here here you can see one school. There is acoustic ceiling and acoustic wall panels at the back of the room, and some tiles above the wall absorber. So this is very normal way how you use how you install these acoustic panels. This is from northern Finland, one big school. This is very normal nowadays. Nowadays to have this kind of learning environments. So it's large, very large space, and you will see in left side you will see there's another other space for learning, so you can really you can close those spaces, or just leave it very open depending on what is your method in teaching at that moment. So here you can see also acoustic baffles. So you can if the architect like to do it this way, it's possible. It looks nice. It's like baffles. Or on the right there's kind of a normal acoustic ceiling. Same school, another. It looks strange because there's no pupils around, but the architect here has used other color. So this blue, like the one before, it was green, and this is blue. And here are some screens to avoid direct sound, as you can see. And what is important too, and very normal nowadays, to have a wall-to-wall carpet, soft carpet, so that has some effect too. Still the same school. This is orange colored now, and very typical learning environment, at least in Finland. Again, some baffles and wall absorbers. You can't actually see in this picture, but it is very important to have wall panels too. Still the same school. This is the canteen. I took this building, this picture here because this is not only for eating. Nowadays, these canteens must be used also for kind of a learning environment. You can do your homework here, or you can have a little lesson here, or something like something, let's say a concert or a bigger speech or something. So this is very normal nowadays to have this huge hall. It's like a multi-purpose hall, I would say. This is another school in southern Finland. One trend in Finland is, I call this open learning environment too, but it is actually kind of a corridor. But in Finland, it's we try to get rid of corridors. So this is a space where pupils move around, but you can also do your homework here, or you have a little group discussion here or something else, and you can, in these lockers, you can keep your stuff there too. Okay. And same school, nice acoustic ceiling, nice soft wall-to-wall carpet. This blue one is quite high, and it's good. It breaks the direct sound again, so it helps if there are some groups working behind this blue one. And some sliding doors at the back to it. It helps a lot if you need to divide these spaces. And same school again. So you can see it's very open all over. You can see those kind of a corridor you saw in the picture before. This picture is actually full of acoustic treatment. You can see acoustic tiles. You can see behind those ceiling bars, there's acoustic wool to absorb the noise, and also this wooden one, what you see in the middle. I forgot how you call those. Anyway, it's full of small holes, and there's acoustic wool inside that wool wood. Sorry, and also acoustic tiles on the right. So there's a canteen downstairs, and there's all kind of actions. But I've been in this building many times, and I always wonder why it's so. Of course, there is some noise, but it's soft noise. So all this acoustic treatment makes it very soft, the noise, and that's the main purpose. Here's a good example of acoustic tiles where pupils have designed these pictures. So they draw pictures, and these are digi printed into this acoustic tiles. So it's pupils really like this room because it looks like their world. Good idea. And Opinmäki School is one here in near Helsinki. So this is also there are lots of open learning landscape, open learning spaces or semi-open learning. It's they use it that way. Okay, and then the second part is wooden schools. It's a new trend too. There are quite many local municipalities are interested in it anyway. So it might be a little bit more expensive nowadays because the situation in the world has gone that way. So sometimes the material is more expensive, like nowadays. So let's see what happens with this. But it is yeah, well okay, I jump to next one. So the buildings could be almost totally made of wood or partly with some concrete frame parts. And that's very normal. In the middle of the building there are some concrete parts. So wood brings a biophilic natural feeling, and building acoustic plays an important role here, sound insulation and so on. So there must be a good acoustician involved in these projects, that's for sure. And for a good room acoustics, again I emphasize ceiling and parts of walls must be installed with sound absorbing tiles. Wood is still quite hard, so you really need those. And here I present one wooden school. Actually, it's timber building, so it's the biggest timber building in the world. Actually, it looks. I show some pictures inside. So there is an acoustic ceiling, of course, but you really need to put those wall panels. Otherwise, it's too echoic. This space, for example. This is a gym sport hall. Now they use it in a concert or there's some bigger presentation or something. So they have put these chairs there. But acoustic ceiling again. This is from one classroom. Looks very traditional classroom in this way. There are, of course, these open learning landscapes, but in every school they need these traditional classrooms too for some purpose. And this is one of them. And the last one, this is the same as my picture at the beginning. So this is the biggest wooden school in Finland. So that was the biggest timber school in the world. So this is the biggest wooden school in Finland. So again, a huge hall where people can meet or follow some presentation or a concert or something like that. So you can see the canteen at the back downstairs. So again, lots of noise around, voices and noise around. And on the right, you see some concrete part of this wooden school. So thank you. That was some pictures.
Sorry, I removed you a bit abruptly. But thank you very much, Pauli, for sharing your perspective from Finland. And I'm gonna just see if there is any comments in the chat. There is quite a few comments, but there is no questions. And I will then, yeah, thank you all for joining us today's webinar. And oh, there is a question from the musicology department in Vienna, and they're asking Mikolai. So I'm bringing Mikolai back in the stream. They're interested if there is a standardized questionnaire that you used for the survey that you did in Warsaw.
No, the questionnaire was prepared specially for this survey, but it was adapted to another survey that is going on now in this 10 Warsaw primary school that was completed in last 2 years. So the original questionnaire was very extended. You really needed 40 minutes to answer all questions. And the new one is much more compact. It's allowed to finish that in 10, maybe 15 minutes. It is done in Polish, but if somebody is interested in, it could be easily translated to English. So please send a request for that.
Yep. So we will make sure to share our email. I will ask my colleagues that are moderating the chat to share the info email from the Future Classroom Lab. And then if there is any questions, Sarah, you can send it to us, and then we can connect you with Mikolai or somebody from specifically from Austria, I guess, for this discussion to follow. And then I'm just gonna bring everybody back in because it's easier like this. And we have another question from Subhankar or about Harsal's presentation, and they're asking, can you describe how Ecophon is working with government schools in India?
Yeah. You able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, in government projects specifically, there is various multiple parties involved. There is someone called as a CPWD which is involved. So we get in touch with them. We share with them our surveys, our studies, and what kind of benefits they may fetch out of these studies, and then we align it to the infrastructure or the absorbers that have been specified, or what can be done in to sort of nurture the existing environment which is there. So also we work with a lot of government representatives in terms of constantly updating them on the projects that we've done, on the latest advancement in terms of acoustics. And that's how it's a long way to go in terms of the government projects, but I'm sure we're also trying to have some sort of standardization there in the National Building Code of India, wherein it covers speech clarity and other aspects as well. So currently there is only reverberation time. So there are multiple ways that we to make a mark.
Thank you for answering. And there is a last question of how, I don't know who is going to answer this, perhaps Pauli, it's for you. How open plan schools acoustic treatment differs from classic school?
May I?
Sure.
Yep. Okay. So you need more acoustic treatment, that's for sure. If you think about square meters of some space in a classic school, normal classroom, you need maybe 80% square meters. If you think about the space, if you need like 80 or 90% acoustic tiles on ceilings. So in open learning landscapes, you need something like 140, I would say. So that's quite a lot. So, okay, if you have the ceiling, it's 100%. So you need to use walls. You need to have if you want to be perfect, you need some wall-to-wall soft carpet. You need some soft furniture and maybe some sliding doors. You might have some screens or something like that. So all in all, much more acoustic tiles. All researchers show that, and all Finnish acousticians agree the same thing. It is, and in every seminar conference I am a speaker in Finland, it's always a problem. Always they ask the same thing and comment that we need to do more for acoustics because there is much more voices and noise and all kind of moving happenings around. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has a comment, perhaps either on this question or you want to add something before we close. I don't see any questions from the chat, so I would like to thank all of you, the speakers, for joining us today, for taking the time to come on board and present your kind of findings and research. And also thank you all, our participants, for joining us today's webinars. And we hope that you had the chance to learn more about the power of sound and its impact on educational environments. The webinar recording will be posted shortly on this YouTube link that you're following, most of you. So feel free to revisit or share it with others that might not have the chance to be with us in the live stream and want to continue the discussion or learn more about acoustics in the classroom. Make sure to follow us on the social media for more opportunities like this, and see you next time. Thank you all and have a good day.